This prisoner had a peculiar habit. During every yard time, he'd sidle up close to the guards, sneaking glances at the keys on their belts. Back in his cell, he'd meticulously sketch every curve and notch from memory. If even a single line was off, he'd patiently start over, pursuing absolute precision. But that's not all. At 3 a.m. sharp, he would light a match and study the keyhole on his cell door. Then he would carefully tear off a small piece of paper and press it against the lock. In no time, he'd have the shape of the keyhole, which he would trace over with a pencil. Once done, he'd take another piece of paper, roll it up, and slowly insert it into the keyhole while gently pressing down with his pencil. It took nearly 20,000 attempts before he finally measured the depth of the lock. But even with all that, he couldn't bring himself to celebrate, because the trickiest part, figuring out what the key was made of, remained unsolved. The next day, Mike seized a chance to tell his cellmate about his plan, hoping to get some ideas. 2 days later, his buddy came up with a risky scheme. But for a shot at freedom, Mike was willing to gamble. So, while working in the woodshop, he took advantage of a distracted guard and swiped a few sturdy wooden sticks, planning to smuggle them out in his thermos. But things took an unexpected turn. As Mike was leaving, his nerves got the best of him and his expression gave him away, raising the guard's suspicions. The guard grabbed Mike's thermos, poured out the coffee without hesitation, and shook it violently for a good minute. Strangely, after a thorough inspection, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, so he had no choice but to let Mike go. Little did anyone know, that small oversight would later leave an indelible stain on the prison's reputation. The moment Mike got back to his cell, he couldn't wait to dump out the wooden blocks from his thermos. The reason he managed to evade the guard's search was because he had planned for this exact scenario. When the guard approached, Mike's accomplice intentionally knocked over a box of nails, creating a distraction to buy time, while Mike hid in the back and stuffed a wad of towels into the thermos, narrowly fooling the inspection. With all the necessary components now in hand, Mike got to work on the wood. He kept his eyes glued to the material, not missing a single detail. Even the tiniest splinters were sanded down until they were smooth and even. Half an hour later, all the pieces needed for the key were finished. Next, he carefully applied glue to the surface and meticulously assembled each part. To speed up the drying process, the warm light bulb overhead conveniently served as a natural heater. After 30 seconds, Mike picked up the wooden key, confirmed it was securely bonded, then took out his blueprints to double-check everything before making final adjustments. After numerous rounds of fine-tuning, a complete wooden key finally took shape. With a mix of nervousness and excitement, Mike slowly approached the cell door and gently inserted the key into the lock. Holding his breath, he turned the key, full of anticipation. With a crisp click, the iron door actually swung open. Instantly, an irrepressible grin spread across his face. But his elation was short-lived as he soon faced an even bigger problem. He deflated like a punctured balloon, his earlier excitement vanishing. The thick steel door in front of him loomed like an insurmountable mountain. And most disheartening of all, its lock could only be opened from the outside. But there was no turning back now. Mike decided to start working on a second key. From then on, whenever he found a spare moment, he would put all his energy into memorizing the shape of the guard's key. Every night back in his cell, he would secretly work on crafting it. As about a week later, the second replica key was finally complete. To test it out, Mike snuck over to the door during a group work shift while his cellmate kept watch in the distance. Whenever the key